Hello, everyone. Just going to give people a couple more minutes to pop in. We invited a very large group of people, so I'm just going to give them a couple more minutes and then we'll start. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Stephen Petrick. I am the chair of TAG, the Transit Action Alliance of Guelph. You can find out more about our group at taaguelph.com. We are a transit advocacy group based in Guelph, looking at improving local transit as well as regional transit. Tonight, we're pleased to present this concept plan of linking the watershed. And this is a conversation starter, we hope, between this region of Guelph, Waterloo, Brantford, Wellington County, County of Brant, and others. So the agenda tonight is a brief introduction, a presentation from Warren Schnurr, who I will introduce shortly, and then we'll have some time for questions and comments. You can put your questions in the chat, or you can email them to us at linkthewatershed@gmail.com. So I will now just pass it over to Warren. Warren Schnurr is from Unifor Local 4304. He's chair of the Union and Politics Committee, and he'll be doing the presentation tonight.
Thank you, Stephen. If I could get screen sharing ability, I'll pop up the presentation show. Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for coming. As Steve said, I'm the chair of the Union and Politics Committee of Unifor Local 4304. Unifor Local 4304 is the labor union that represents employees at Brantford Transit in the region of Waterloo. The Link the Watershed initiative has turned into a collaboration between our union, Unifor, the Amalgamated Transit Union, specifically Local 1189, which represents the members at Guelph Transit. ATU also represents members at Brantford Transit, and TAG, the Transit Action Alliance of Guelph. As I get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation, I have made available downloadable content, including this slideshow, higher quality maps and graphics at the following URL, tiny.cc/L-T-W. Recognizing that the maps and graphics on the presentation may not be the highest resolution, may be difficult to see, so everything can be downloaded from this link. So, link the watershed. What is the problem statement here? The urban areas of the Grand River watershed, namely Waterloo, Kitchener, Cambridge, the region of Waterloo, the city of Guelph, and the city of Brantford, although close in proximity and local in nature to each other, do not have efficient if any, transit links between them. The most notable ones being the links between Guelph and Cambridge and Brantford and Cambridge. Transit users, as well as advocacy groups such as TAG, have been vocal for years about the poor connectivity between our communities. Go Transit service, although available in each urban area, is not geared towards these local transit connections and is currently not meeting the needs of transit users who need these local connections. And in fairness to Go, that is not their travel market. The loss of Greyhound service has exacerbated the already lacking intercommunity transit options. When Greyhound was in service, we had some connection ability between Guelph and Waterloo Region that was relatively frequent, but it still was a private carrier and involved paying an extra fare, may not have been the most convenient for people who need local transit. The missing urban to urban transit connections that I just mentioned are also roadblocks to potential users of the rural transit services that have most recently been established. And they are endeavoring to create a unified transit network across southwestern Ontario. So we have rural transit carriers that are linking to each one of our urban areas, and the fact that you can't get between those two means that ridership is potentially hampered for the rural carriers. So the Link the Watershed initiative, in a nutshell, is a proposal to link our communities with a network of 4 new conventional transit routes operated by our existing municipal urban transit providers, being Brantford Transit, Grand River Transit, and Guelph Transit, as soon as possible. Understanding that there is a lead time and planning involved, and that would probably mean, if all the ducks are in a row, probably fall 2022. With additional service changes to the rural transit services, mainly Brant Transit, Wellington RideWell, Ride Norfolk, PC Connect, and GOST, which is the Guelph Owen Sound Transportation Service, with the goal of creating a highly integrated network of rural and urban transit services in the Grand River watershed, which also expands transit connectivity across southwestern Ontario. This is a proposal to hopefully be funded with available funding from the provincial and federal government, which was announced on March 1st through press release on the Ontario government website. And that would include startup capital funding if additional vehicles are needed, bus stops installed, facility upgrades, et cetera, as well as operating funds for a specific period of time, potentially 3 to 5 years, operating it as an essentially a pilot project until full ridership can be determined and the local municipalities could work the funding into their own budget. It's also a proposal that respects current jurisdictional divisions in providing local transit service. New urban transit routes that are going to be proposed would provide local service in their home jurisdiction. And then as they travel to the neighboring jurisdiction, they would do drop-offs only on their way in and pickups only on their way out to avoid stepping on each other's toes. And this is a service configuration that has been used between the city of Toronto and the other 905 communities in the Greater Golden Horseshoe for years. You often see local carriers crossing municipal boundaries, even upper tier municipal boundaries, to provide transit service that's seamless, and that's despite the fact that Go also operates in the entire region. The core of the Link the Watershed proposal is the network of 4 new urban transit routes operated by the local municipalities. The first being a Brantford Transit route between Brantford and the city of Cambridge on Highway 24. That was proposed to start at the Brantford bus terminal, past the Brantford train station, travel through Brantford Commons, which is another Brantford transit hub in their network, and then travel up Highway 24 to the GRT Ainsley terminal in the city of Cambridge. The second route is a Grand River Transit route starting at Fairway Station at Fairview Park Mall in Kitchener, traveling out Fairway Road through the region of Waterloo International Airport, which is currently undergoing a big expansion. Then down Kossuth Road and Wellington Road 124, down the Hanlon Parkway to service Stone Road Mall, and then down Stone Road to the University of Guelph, which are both Guelph Transit hubs. The third route is another Grand River Transit route that would start at the Cambridge Center Station in the center of Cambridge, then travel up Hespeler Road past the Pine Bush Station, down Pine Bush Road and Franklin Boulevard through the village of Hespeler, and then on to Guelph through Highway 124 to Guelph Central Station in downtown Guelph, which I should also note is a route that roughly parallels a proposed rail link that the region of Waterloo has proposed to link the city of Cambridge to the Kitchener GO train line. And the fourth route would be a Guelph Transit route starting from the Woodlawn Smart Centers transit transfer point and traveling to downtown Kitchener via Highway 7, Woodlawn Road, Victoria Street to the planned central station in downtown Kitchener at King and Victoria, then returning to Guelph on a loop through downtown Kitchener, servicing the Frederick Ion station, and then returning to Guelph on Highway 7. It is also proposed that that route would then be extended to the planned Breslau GO station when that is constructed and opened. Each of the four routes has some estimated traveling and running times. This was developed partly to help estimate the operating costs, but also to give an idea of what potential transit users would expect in terms of travel time. 3 of the 4 routes would have a 45-minute one-way schedule, but that also includes the layover time of the vehicle at the end of the line to account for possible traffic congestion en route on the highways that are between the cities. And one of the routes would have a 1-hour one-way travel time, again, with a layover accommodated at the end of the line. These graphs are downloadable, as I mentioned, at the tiny.cc link, and you can see the estimated actual travel times between different points on each route, which would probably be shorter because if passengers don't need to travel the entire line, they're not going to experience that full travel time. These travel times are noticeably shorter than the available transit connections that are in place now. For example, trying to take GO Transit from Cambridge to Guelph can be a 2 to 3 hour journey, assuming you can make a decent connection in Aberfoyle. The lack of existence of a transit connection between Cambridge and Brantford means that anyone using transit exclusively currently faces about a 5-hour travel time through the city of Mississauga, which is something that most people just don't do. Estimated requirements for service on these 4 routes. Again, running times are 45 minutes one way for 3 routes and 60 minutes one way for 4 routes. That allowed us to estimate some costs. Calculation assumptions are $80 a service hour. We're proposing that these routes operate every 30 minutes based on a 20-hour service day, 365 days a year. So providing frequent, efficient, established, known connections for local transit users between each of these communities. With the estimated annual operating costs for the core routes being about $7.5 million a year, and that's spread amongst the 3 urban transit systems. As part of the Link the Watershed initiative are some rural transit service changes. The first being changing Brant Transit to offer a pickup drop-off point in the city of Cambridge at the Ainsley Terminal. This would link the entire county of Brant to the transit services available in the region of Waterloo, and also provide a pickup drop-off point in the village of Ayr, provided that GRT eventually introduces service to that community, which I believe they are keen to do. For GOST, the Guelph Owen Sound Transportation Service, we're proposing that a new stop be added at the Woodlawn Smart Centers with pickups only on the way into Guelph pickups only leaving Guelph, drop-offs only when they're entering Guelph. And it should be noted that GOST already travels past this transit hub, but doesn't stop there. This would be an easy add to that service. For Ride Norfolk, we're proposing that their service be extended to the Brantford train station from the Brantford bus terminal. The bus currently sits at the Brantford bus terminal for about 25 minutes. That could easily be used to extend the route a short distance to the Brantford train station, giving those customers direct connections to and from via rail in the city of Brantford. For PC Connect, we're proposing that there are two routes that operate into the region of Waterloo be modified to terminate at the central station in downtown Kitchener at all times instead of Conestoga Station. Currently, both routes terminate at Conestoga Mall, and service is only provided to Central Station on weekdays. Proposing that be changed to provide service to Central Station at all times. And this would give both those routes a direct connection to the proposed Guelph Transit route to the city of Guelph. That opens up a whole new avenue of travel connections. For Route 2 for PC Connect, we'd also propose that their service be modified to include a stop at the Boardwalk Station, which is on the west side of Kitchener-Waterloo. So when that service is coming into the region of Waterloo from St. Mary's and Stratford, that is the closest available major connection to Grand River Transit that service could provide on its way to downtown Kitchener. Right now, it completely bypasses that area, continues on the Conestoga Parkway all the way to Conestoga Mall before stopping. And finally, for Wellington RideWell, proposing that the addition of several pickup drop-off points in the region of Waterloo, connecting Wellington County to all the region of Waterloo transit services. And those are proposed to be at Church and Walker in Elmira, which would connect to GRT's Route 21, PC Connect Route 1, the future Breslau GO Station, the region of Waterloo International Airport, Pine Bush Station in Cambridge, which is at the GO Transit stop, corner Hesper Road and Pine Bush, as well as the Cambridge Center Station. And these are all kind of the closest transfer points on the periphery of the region Waterloo Transit network closest to Wellington County. In case anyone asks the question, why not just use GO Transit? In general, the purpose of GO Transit service has been to provide longer distance links that facilitate travel to, from, and through the Greater Toronto Area, with any resulting local connectivity being a side benefit. If you look at GO Transit's entire network, their system is entirely geared towards this type of travel into, through, and from the GTA. Like I said earlier, Cambridge folks, Guelph folks, they can travel between the two cities, but the Aberfoyle connection is not timed, it's not convenient, it's time consuming, because that is not the service that GO is geared towards. In general, additional GO service is welcome, but is not and should not be expected to take the place of much needed local transit connections between neighboring communities. So I think everyone is looking forward to all-day two-way GO service on the Kitchener line, and eventually, hopefully, maybe rail service to Cambridge or rail service to Brantford. But again, those are not the local transit connections that people also need. Service that's intended for travel between immediately adjacent municipalities is typically handled by local transit services, as I mentioned earlier, through the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And our municipalities can be providing and should be providing the same services, in our opinion. These proposed connections in the Link the Watershed initiative are relatively short, they're quick to drive, and they are local in nature for travelers. So when you look at the connection between Hespeler and Guelph, That is a connection that can be driven in a personal vehicle in about 10 minutes. But like I said, existing travel or transit availability makes that journey about 2 to 3 hours. The distance between Cambridge and Brantford, that can be driven at about 20-25 minutes. Again, that's about a 5-hour transit travel connection at this time. The additional benefit of having local transit provide these connections are that local transit users would be able to use their local transit passes and fares to travel between the communities and provide a service that is fully integrated as part of the local transit network. So on that note, transit fares, we're proposing or expecting that existing transit fares and fare media for each respective system's route would continue to be used for travel on each route. No proposed fare integration at this time, but that is simply to try and expedite the implementation of this and to keep the implementation simple. So if you're on a Guelph Transit route traveling between Guelph and Kitchener, you would pay a Guelph fare, and likewise for the other routes. Fare integration could be considered if it doesn't affect the timely implementation of these new services. I'm sure the customers would love it if they could just use their Guelph card across Grand River Transit or Brantford Transit. That would be a huge benefit to those customers. But if implementing that means delaying the potential for introducing these new services, then that could probably be pushed to the future. The urban transit system fare media under this proposal, we think should be available at major connection points in each community, either through fare vending machines or through retailers. And that just means that if you're in the city of Kitchener and you're downtown Kitchener and you want to catch the Guelph Transit bus to Guelph, that there would be an option to buy a Guelph Transit smart card there instead of having to pay a Guelph cash fare traveling to Guelph and getting your smart card at the other end. This would also mean that, for example, you could get a Brantford card in the city of Cambridge at Ainsley Terminal before you travel to Brantford. Or if you're at the University of Guelph, Stone Road Mall, or Guelph Central Station, you could get your GRT fare card there. So you could go to Waterloo Region. How would this be paid for? The province announced through press release on March 1st, 2021, titled Ontario Increases Support for Transit Access Across the Province. The link to that press release is available at the bottom of this slide. They said, as part of the state Safe Restart Agreement funding, municipalities need to work with the province to explore options to ensure local transit is safe, sustainable, affordable, and integrated both during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. And further, to support this work, Ontario is allowing municipalities to use Safe Restart funding, agreement funding towards new initiatives to make it easier and more affordable to travel between different transit systems, like adding capacity for on-demand microtransit and increasing fare and service integration across the region. And then finally, we are committed to supporting our municipal partners in their mission to build back transit ridership when we come out of this pandemic. And further, we recognize there's an opportunity now to work with our partners to ensure transit is safe, sustainable, and affordable during COVID-19 and as we begin to recover. So through this press release, it seems to indicate that this would be exactly the type of project that would qualify for funding under this Safe Restart Agreement. In the press release, they also mentioned that as of the March 1st release date, there was about $650 million available to municipalities across the province. This would be a perfect opportunity to get in and implement these services, assuming the province and federal government make this funding available. So in summary, with the government funding, assuming it's provided, the Link the Watershed initiative is a relatively straightforward option to provide coordinated and efficient transit connections for users between all the service providers in the Grand River watershed. We're talking about using existing service providers, expanding on existing services, and not requiring a huge investment in infrastructure. We're hoping that after today, the officials from each transit service, urban and rural, as well as municipalities, can work together to refine the proposal, determine the final costs, as well as jointly apply for the provincial and federal funding. Provincial and federal officials, hopefully, will eagerly provide the requested funding for the immediate benefit of our existing and potential transit users, as well as the long-term benefit for all our communities. And we're hoping that if everything comes together, that implementation could happen in 2022 after all the necessary planning and agreements are made and buses purchased, employees hired, etc. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. I'll turn it back over to Stephen in a moment for questions and answers. Just want to put some potential contacts out there for you. I can continue to provide technical commentary on this initiative. I did draft it, but if you need official commentary from the ATU or Unifor, the best people to contact would be the presidents of those unions. Scott Bate being the president of ATU 1189 for Guelph Transit, and Brendan Burke being the president of Unifor Local 4304, my union for Grand River Transit. And then, of course, for advocacy, Stephen and the board of directors of the Transit Action Alliance of Guelph. Thank you.
Warren, could you put the link for the presentation in the chat so that everybody can access it easily?
The download link? Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen, back to you.
So I'm going to open it up to anybody who's attending. If they wanted to ask a question or have any comments, you can either put it through the chat or unmute yourself, and we can go from there.
Steve, can I?
Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, sorry, Terry Johnson from Transport Action Canada. There is absolutely no doubt that Transport Action Ontario will support this. Thank you very much, Warren, and everybody involved for a really well thought out proposal. There's a lot here that's very straightforward, hard to argue with, cost effective, and I really hope that politicians will see that as this goes forward. Our feedback to the Greater Golden Horseshoe Draft Transportation Plan from MTO really identified this corridor as being something they really haven't considered. That entire plan was written on a radial basis from Toronto, not really thinking about intercity or suburb to suburb travel anywhere in the region, which is actually a vast part of the travel demand. My son is looking at university places, and he was looking at what would happen if he went to Waterloo and one of his mates went to McMaster. How would they get to see each other? And he was he has some very choice words for the way transportation system currently set up. I would ask with this, is there a reason in particular Hamilton is not in this? Is somebody dragging their feet, or is this just to keep the scope of this tightly constrained to get something done in short order and then look at that in future? And then the other thing that I'm involved with is we're in close conversations with Southwest Community Transit. They're of course recipients of community transportation grants, just like GOST and RideWell and all the rest of it. They're very much looking at the fare integration angle so that you can go from one system to the other. And I think it's very important that we make this simple for passengers, as well as making this as simple as possible for our agencies. And so I really like that idea of fare vending machines at the interchanges. That would be huge. But ideally, we want this to be a one-ticket ride. You know, if you're going from Port Dover to Owen Sound, that becomes a one-ticket ride, and that you know that you're going to get there. You're not going to get stuffed and left beside the road because of a misconnection somewhere along the line. That becomes very important. And as I said, the Southwest Community Transit Group is already working and having conversations around that. So joining the agencies involved in this initiative into that conversation, I think, would be very important. The one hub I didn't see mentioned was the Sports World 401 hub. That's become a hub as the intercity bus market has been deregulated. A lot of the bus companies that hopped into that market to replace Greyhound have looked at it and said, okay, we don't want to go too far from 401, but Sports World is a transit hub. Let's try and get there. So I was wondering if we can tie into that and create some more synergy in that area.
Okay, couple things to break down there. So City Hamilton, strictly a matter of scope. Absolutely, the Highway 8 and Highway 6 corridors between, Waterloo Region and Guelph and Hamilton are grossly underserviced. Well, no service. If we could get the City of Hamilton to get in on this, I think that would be fantastic. I don't know how open they would be to getting in right this second, or if they're overwhelmed with, I really don't know. We haven't reached out to them. I know there's been some discussion about a go route on Highway 6. I don't know how far or how developed that is. But absolutely, I agree that Hamilton is lacking connections with our area as well. Southwest Community Transit, there is a representative in the room here from SCT. I did have a pleasant conversation with her on the phone last week, and for that reason, she's here. So hopefully, being that SCT directly is involved with and coordination can help be helped along on that level. What was the other point? Sports World Station. Didn't really touch too much on that. I imagine that in the future, this could lead to further integration. Sports World, being part of the Grand River Transit network and having go stop there and having the local services stop there. It's also a proposed ion station when the Cambridge LRT is extended. So certainly there would be a lot of connectivity there, even if it's not expressly in this initiative. But just as an example, I could picture a Guelph Transit route being operated possibly from the west side of Guelph to Sports World Station. I'm sure there are probably a lot of commuters from Guelph that go to places in the Cambridge Business Park, or post-secondary students who go to Conestoga College who would want to connect down that way. So I can certainly see that type of connection in the future as well.
I have a question from, let's see who's next here.
Could I ask a
Troy,
question?
Troy, go ahead.
Yeah, I know this is probably, I'm not sure if you showed anything this or if you calculated this, but clearly this would mean jobs, right? Would mean jobs for drivers and other infrastructure jobs for this. Have you done any projections of how many jobs it might create?
Just amongst our union, well, the union perspective, certainly there is a lot of enthusiasm about full-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
There, just some rough estimations are off the top of our head. We were thinking 15 to 20 full-time jobs at GRT, just kind of roughly based on the service hours proposed. Again, that's just off the top of our heads, trying to do the math based on a 40-hour work week and stuff like that. So there is that benefit to having additional full-time transit operator jobs, as well as mechanic jobs, and people need to service the fleet, et cetera.
Yeah, because I would consider that would be a good motivator for pitching to the government too, you know, the province and the municipalities. All right, yeah, it's a very good presentation, very impressive, guys, and I'll let somebody else ask a question here.
Mr. Donaldson.
Thank you. Has there been any discussions with governments yet? I just looking at the screen, there are more journalists on this call than government representatives. So is this like the official rollout for this? Has there been any behind the scenes stuff that has gone on yet?
Yes, so myself and my union president have had a meeting with the GRT planning staff. They seemed enthusiastic about the idea. In fact, one of the planners I do see here in the room, some very positive comments. So it's my understanding they're taking that back and they're reviewing it, and we'll provide some feedback at some point. So yes, there has been some discussion there. And it's also my understanding that our counterparts in the ATU have been reaching out to their officials as well through internal channels.
Then can you describe like what the next phase of this is? Like what happens when this Zoom is over tonight? What comes next?
Well, it's my hope that with the representation we have here and the discussions we've had so far, that our transit officials will kind of get in touch with each other and maybe take this to the next level, see what the final costs are involved with that. I'm more than happy to provide more detail, but they're the experts when it comes to, you know, final capital and operating costs and stuff. So I think moving it to that level, seeing the viability of the proposal, hopefully they will pursue it further.
And I guess my other question is, are there like, what are the metrics for success? Like, let's say this launches in fall 2022. I know that a lot of the money that the province has been offering through these grants programs are kind of like for pilot projects. So I assume this would be treated in very much the same way. So if you're to produce this and make sure it goes from pilot phase to something a bit more permanent and maybe expand things, some of the things Terry talked about, what I guess what are the things you have to, the checklist you have to cross off? What makes this a success and what doesn't?
Well, I would hope, just off the top of my head here, that if ridership meets kind of each transit system's official, you know, kind of ridership metric for improving service or keeping service, that if the ridership meets those metrics for them, then it would become a permanent service.
Okay, thank you.
And in terms of connecting to the politicians, this is being recorded, so we will be sharing this with them again and hopefully connecting with them in the region and flagging it again for them. Is there any other questions or comments?
I do see another question in the chat.
Yep. What's the process for making this happen?
As I just touched on, I'm hoping that officials for each transit provider, you know, they can start getting in touch with each other, have some coordination at that level. We've proposed the idea. We pointed out the potential funding that's available. So hopefully that leads to furthering of the idea.
I also would like to comment that we do have one MP here today, and we also have a representative of an MPP here today. So that's a start. There may be more in. I don't recognize everyone's names, and we also want to get the chambers of commerce involved, the NGOs involved. It's basically getting the idea out there to enough politicians, and they were all invited to this Zoom meeting, and we will follow up with them, but it's also letting them know that their constituents really want this. They're tired of being stranded in their own municipality.
Has anybody talked to Communitech about this?
No, not yet.
I think they might come on board. I think this is, strengthening the region as a tech hub.
Yeah.
Transit is a big part of that. What could we as Transport Action do that would be helpful? We've got a Transport Action Ontario board meeting tomorrow night, actually. So I'd very much like to take this along to that meeting and ask the board to formally back it. What else? What do you need from us? What resources could we potentially provide to you?
Certainly, public awareness at every level would be beneficial.
Yeah.
Having the public aware of this proposal, that it's been put out there for our officials to look at, and have them tell their municipal leaders, we want this, we need this, as soon as possible. To have them writing their elected officials saying, please make this happen. So as many avenues to that end.
Now, other than I know you've got the Google Docs things. I already downloaded a lot of that and looked at it while you were talking as well to see the maps in detail. Is there going to be a website created for this? Would you like us to write a story on our website about this?
Stephen,
we will launch a website. We just wanted to get this out there first before we wanted to give everybody a heads up that we need to give a heads up before we really go public. So it will come in the next few days with this presentation and other information.
Yeah, in my not advocacy life, I'm trying to open a bookstore, which is a bit of a nightmare in the middle of the pandemic. But Stephen, let me know what I can do, and I will try and find time for this, because this is really exciting.
You can email us, and we can connect with you after the meeting.
Yeah.
And we can talk further.
Sure.
There's a question about intermodal transit connections. Do the service providers, all the service providers, have bike racks on their vehicles?
I know all the urban systems do. So Guelph, Grand River Transit, and Brantford do. I'm not familiar with whether the rural providers do or not. I'm not sure there.
Another question is what kind of public support or might be looking for. I see UG students being very supportive of this. We definitely need your voice in getting this to the leaders at City Council in Guelph and in Waterloo Region and Brantford, and just saying, hey, this is what we need to help fill these gaps, because this has been we've been talking about regional transit for 25 plus years, and it's now even worse than it was before. So this is kind of the time to do it and not just talk about it.
Yeah, and there are more benefits of having the interconnectivity than just people getting to jobs, or it takes more cars off the road, so it helps employers with it helps employers expand their region that they can find employees. It means employers in industrial parks that don't have current transportation can widen their pool of potential employees, because now they don't have to have a car to get into. So if you're working in the Northern Guelph Industrial Park, or you're working in Hanlon Park, the Hanlon Park, you have to have a car for most of those employers. This is a way to stop that from happening. It helps with the climate change initiatives because it takes cars off the road. For every $1 spent on public transit, you get a $3 economic bonus back. So there's a lot of it's not just getting the buses in place, the connections in place. It is also it benefits in so many other areas. It means that people that live in Guelph that have to go to St. Mary's for heart can get there without having to take a $65 cab ride to get to their specialist appointment at St. Mary's, because that's the cardiac center. The government has connected us at a medical level, at all sorts of other levels where there are specialities in different places, but they have not provided the transportation to get there unless you have a car.
Another question is, has there been any word from Megabus about restarting the Hamilton Cambridge Kitchener route? I've heard that there's nothing on the horizon. All I've heard is that GO is looking at a Hamilton to Guelph route in their 10-year plan at the moment. There's a comment here. I will buy books from your store, Terry. GOST doesn't have bike rats, but TTR, Grey County, will be adding them. And that is.
Could I ask a question?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, Barbara, you said that there's a public demand for this. Is there been surveys done or anything that I could look at that I could include in the story?
A lot of it is anecdotal. I used to live in Guelph and work in Kitchener. And when Greyhound first started cutting services, I ended up, the bus that would get me into work on time was canceled. And so I ended up having to carpool in. And if I had to work overtime, because there was only one bus coming back at night between 5 o'clock and 9 o'clock. And most of you may know that Kitchener Transit Hub is not a place a single woman wants to be sitting alone after dark, right? So I was then faced, if I had to do overtime on my job, I had to pay $65 to get home. I talked to a lot of cab drivers over the few years I was there, and they were telling me that they were, because nobody in their group in the industrial park that were working in the North Industrial Park in Guelph, they would have up to 5 passengers sharing the $65 cab ride over to Guelph, and Guelph taxis were taking them back. So there's been a lot of, there's ride shares, there's carpooling, there's all sorts of different things going on, but no one has ever taken the time or had the ability to do the research.
Yeah.
I know when they canceled our Greyhound bus, Greyhound outright lied about the number of people in the bus. They were counting the average number of people were the people who were paying the cash there. They never counted the people that had their daily passes, their monthly pass. So when that route was canceled, the first one in the morning, they actually ended up paying for cabs because they canceled the buses, but they were still supposed to be providing the service. So they were providing up to 5 or 6 cabs to the pass holders to get to their jobs.
I think it's really hard to get hard data on this. I mean, if you think about the situation right now, if you want to get to Kitchener from Guelph on public transit, you have to take GO. But how do you get there? Well, you take the GO bus to Aberfoyle. You get off at Aberfoyle, you wait an hour, get the next bus to go to Kitchener. And you know, who's going to do that route if they could possibly afford another way? Do the $65 cab ride route like Barb suggests, or you know, get a ride with a friend. You know, I think it's really hard given the logistics right now. And also there's no Greyhound anymore. So Greyhound, even if they could give us real numbers, it's an outfit that doesn't exist anymore, at least in Canada. So I think this is one of those weird situations where we don't know what the demand is until you run it.
It's kind of like you build it and they will come.
Mm.
Yeah. I will say from my perspective, I had to give up on opportunities for jobs in Waterloo and in Kitchener because I couldn't get there. You know, And I would love to be working at this job because it pays more than what I'm being paid now, but I'm stuck. I can go to Brampton, I can go to Toronto, but I can't go to Kitchener, which is closer. And that's hurting my, my ability to live a good life. And this has been frustrating because we've been talking about this, different politicians, different councils, for close to 25 years. And yes, GO Transit is coming with two-way all-day GO service, but that's going to be an hourly train service. We don't know what the holiday service will look like. We don't know what the weekend service will look like. We don't know. There's a lot of questions, and it's still 3 to 4 years away. And we don't know what the provincial election will bring. So we don't know what, if it's all going to come together as they're promising. So, this is a great proposal. It fills the gaps. And it's being done successfully in Niagara region with St. Catharines and Niagara Falls. I believe London and Sarnia have some sort of connections as well. Durham region is a great example where they've got all this. So it's been done. It's being done now successfully. And I think it can be done here. We just need everyone to work together, because I believe over the years, maybe there's just been a bit of, this is my area, this is my city, and I don't really want to work with you. Kind of attitude. Maybe it's 2022 almost, guys. Like it's if there was the problem in the 90s, it's gone now. The people that were around are gone now. It's time to realize that it's time to make this and do this and fill this gap in, because the demand is there. We're hearing it from people, from students, from potential workers, but we just need the political will to just move it forward. And Sean was mentioning about W route, and yes, W route was a completely wrong type of service for the region, I think, even without a government subsidy. So is there any other questions or comments? Okay, if you want to get into hold of us, you can email us at linkthewatershed@gmail.com. And I think there's one more question. Or not?
No,
Okay.
there's
Can I
Mike.
jump?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Great. Just wanted to say thanks for the invitation and for the quality of the research here. Like, it's so specific what you're looking to have done, and this is what we need. It's just such a gift from grassroots organizers to just offer up. Here's the problem to be solved, and here's a way to do it. So I really appreciate this. I'm glad it's being recorded, that others can also benefit from this presentation. And certainly as it relates to GRT, if there's a connection that I could help to make 3 weeks into this, so with the staff team still coming together, but certainly would be glad to reach out to GRT, to regional councillors. If that's not a connection you've already made yet, feel free to reach out. I can put my email in the chat. And as someone, and there's so many in Kitchener who have the exact same issue, Stephen, as you were sharing, it pains me to hear that there's folks like yourself that aren't working in Kitchener because there's just no good connection at this point. As someone without a car myself, I'm in the same position too, and have been on those same routes, and so we all know that this is an issue. So anyway, kudos again for the excellent research here, and feel free to reach out if I can help. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great.
Okay, thank you very much for attending tonight. If you want to reach us, you can reach us at linkthewatershed@gmail.com. And thanks for joining us.